Good morning. This is the Therapeutic Conversation Show. I'm your host, Dr. Bryan Jones, here in the house. I have a special guest today that is a colleague of mine. He is just well, look, we've been cutting up in seminary. He also at the great United Theological Seminary here in Dayton, Ohio, where he graduated class of 2018 with me. So I definitely have a colleague and a friend, a respected friend, and he's going to introduce himself in a few minutes. He is a pastor. We are continuing this month talking about mental health, of course. This is the Therapeutic Conversation Show where we're talking about mental health, spirituality, and empowerment. And so, all the people that are out there today, we have a hot topic. I call it a hot topic that we're going to be talking about. And my question that I raised as I'm going across the nation talking about mental health in spiritual communities, in the church, in religious communities, in helping them to integrate mental health services into their own context. The question came up for me, and it's also been my journey, my doctoral journey, is why are pastors not receiving mental health services for themselves? Why are pastors and spiritual leaders not receiving mental health services for themselves? So please call us, reach out to us. We're on Facebook. You can send a comment. You can join the conversation. I think it's going to be a very vital conversation, and definitely my friend Dr. Ian is on to answer questions and from a pastoral perspective, and also just his heart for ministry. But let us go and open up in a word of prayer, and then I'm going to talk about our therapeutic moment, and then we're going to get started. Hi, Dr. Ian. Can I hear you? I need to hear you.
What's up, man? Can you hear
Hey,
me?
yes, I can hear you loud and clear. You're there. All right, let us pray. God, we thank you for this moment in this time. We thank you for 108 Praise Radio, Courtney and the staff. We thank you for everything that you're doing, even as we have in this difficult, sometimes challenging conversation about mental health and spirituality and empowerment. We ask that you would just touch, that things would be clear, that people would get the information that they need, that they would be encouraged, that they would be enlighten and just help us to be better people and better ministers and just better leaders in this world, that we may touch someone's life today, even as we're talking about this and this difficult subject for many people. We thank you for everything that you have done and all that you're doing in us, through us, and around us this day. In your name, I give thanks. Amen. And so it is. All right. We're here. Dr. Ian.
Yes, sir.
So I'm gonna do a semi-formal introduction. Dr. Ian, for the ones that don't know, Dr. Ian and I just graduated from the great United Theological Seminary in Dayton. It's a
Great.
great school. It's a United Methodist Seminary, and we were together for 3 years. So when I first met Dr. Ian Edwards, we just connected as, brothers in Christ, but just as ministers. And, our group, let me just say it that way. Our group, they were so serious about every little thing.
Hmm.
And as we were going through the doctoral program, we just began to joke, we began to laugh, we began to just talk about issues and just encourage one another, because it was not an easy process for both of us. But I just got connected to you, and I saw your heart for ministry. I saw he's a jokester like me, because he loved to joke about stuff, and I just wanted to. So he is the pastor of two churches. One is the Winning Souls Evangelistic Church, and is it Pasadena? Is that the correct?
Pasadena. Uh-huh.
Pasadena,
Pasadena.
Maryland, and he also pastors the church at Bowie, which is in Bowie, Maryland, and so it's right outside of Baltimore, D.C. area. Is that correct?
The Pasadena church the Bowie church is like closer to DC.
Okay, so closer to DC and in that area. So, he has two. Look, you all, he has two churches, not
That's
one
why I
but
have
two.
that's why I have mental health issues.
Exactly. He'll be having two churches, but two churches. He's a church planner, and also I do want to add this in to the conversation. I remember when we would have I call it a huck and buck moment at seminary, because seminary is so rigid sometimes, because of the theological things that, we encountered. But he's also a musician. He would get up and play in the middle of our, huck and buck. Now, people probably say, what is the huck and buck? We got to talk about that later. But it's when the praise break out, and it did happen numerous times during our seminary experience, which was a wonderful thing and a much needed experience, for people to get what they need. And I know I went in too. So the point is, he is well gifted, and I'm just so honored that my friend and my colleague is here today. And he has definitely some thoughts about mental health, and definitely some thoughts about why pastors and religious leaders are not receiving mental health services. What are the blockages in our churches and in our spiritual centers where we're not getting the support, where we're not getting the help that we need? So please call in. Please reach out. I see Dr. James Griffin is on. He is he's been on our show before. He has joined us. I do see him on. I do see Pastor Bobby Graham is on today. So please just share, like, and join the conversation. So Dr. Ian, please introduce yourself in your own way. I'm so excited that you're here, Pastor.
Yeah. I think you said it all, Doctor.
All right.
Yeah, Dr. Ian, I am a church planter. I planted my first church in June 14th of 2009, and my second church, June 14th, 2016. So both of my churches actually have the same plant date. They're in two different counties. And like you said, I'm a musician. I'm very big on community service and outreach. That's what I do. And most of all, I'm probably a jokester. I think that's where where we came into an agreement with us just being jokesters.
Yes.
And I'm a man of God. I'm a minister.
Yes.
And can I say this as in my introduction, man? You said something that I keyed in on in my prayer. You said, Lord, help us to be better ministers and help us to be better people.
Yes.
And I started thinking to myself, that's where the quandary is, because for many ministers, we're focused on being a better minister more than we are being a better person. So we'll take care of ourselves as a minister, what the minister needs, but we don't take care of what the person needs. That's
now you already starting the hot topic, because I posted that on Facebook, and all of a sudden people are commenting on it. So let's go ahead and jump in. I mean, since people now know who you are, let's go ahead and jump right on in and let's begin to talk about it. And that's the question that we're raising. Now, I do want to, for our therapeutic moment, I want to highlight and I want to give shouts out to Dr. E. Dewey Smith at the Greater Travelers Rest Church here, Baptist Church here in Atlanta, Georgia, and he is, definitely one of the prominent ministers here. And I don't know whether it was last week or the week before, he preached a message, and I don't even know what the title was, but the clip that's been viral is that he said that you can call Jesus, but you also need to call a therapist. Mm-hmm. And that thing resonated with me, Dr. Ian, and I said, wow,
Right.
I just thought it was so powerful that we need to use all the tools that God has given to us so we can be better people and not harm people, because someone said one time that there's a thin line between helping people and hurting people.
It is.
And I just think it's very vital that we have this conversation. So what are your thoughts? I mean, I know we've talked about this before. Why are pastors and leadership not interested in getting services, mental health services?
I think for the most part, we're not even acknowledging that it's real. Okay, I get it. You could call it a spirit, you can call it a demon, you can call it anything you want, but the first thing we got to do is just acknowledge that it's real. You need to look at the statistics and say it's real. Look at your congregation and say that it's real. Everything's not going to take oil at the altar. Some stuff means you're going to have to go check in somewhere and go see somebody and get the help that you need. But I think the fact that we don't acknowledge that it's real makes it problematic. Mm-hmm. And so I think the faith prosperity movement for about 20 something years, it just literally made people think you don't have this. You don't have this. Mm-hmm. You just got to speak faith and it's not really there. Mm-hmm. No, but people were speaking faith, giving their money in faith, twisting their ear and turning it to the side in faith, and they still had mental illness. So we Christians, pastors, we told people like, no, you can't believe that. You got to speak things
Mm-hmm.
that are not as though they are. So if from the head, the pastor, he doesn't acknowledge that it's an issue, why would the congregation acknowledge as an issue? And because I'm a pastor and I'm supposed to be the voice of God and the heart of God, and now I'm a believer thinking to myself, well, mental illness is not of God. So it can't, the man of God said it or the woman of God. So mental illness is not of God. So I can't possibly have a mental illness.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing you saying from a pastoral perspective, and also you've been in the military too, as well, speaking
Uh-huh.
from that part, and I definitely want to hear about that. But I think it's very vital. What I'm hearing you saying first is that there's a lack of acknowledgement.
Mm-hmm.
And and I think that that is something systematic, especially in the African American or Black community. We
Yep.
do not, and we think that because we don't acknowledge something, it doesn't exist or it'll just go away.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that you're right on it with that, that it's a lack of acknowledgement. And even in my doctoral work, Dr. Ian, I mean, I talked about the ineffectiveness of mental health in the church, but that we don't acknowledge it. We
Mm-hmm.
don't want to, because acknowledging it means what from your perspective as a pastor? If we acknowledge that I have an issue, I mean, let's just start there, not just a mental health issue, but I have a challenge as a religious leader. What,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think that people don't want to acknowledge?
Now it seems as though maybe I have weakness because remember I'm pastor. I'm authoritative. Greater is he that's
Uh-huh.
in me than he that's in the world. I'm a overcomer, more than a conqueror. So now all of a sudden there's weakness there,
Yes.
and no one wants to admit weakness now it becomes an issue of faith. Well, I thought the Bible says that if you say that thing or speak it, the mount will be removed.
Yes.
Well, so it's a faith issue. It's crazy, man. So we are spiritual people. We're Christians, but if we don't recognize that we have these natural things that happen to us, we're really deceiving ourselves. That's what we're doing. We're walking around
Yes.
in the deception. And
Yes.
the reality is that we want it to just go away. Don't bother with it. It'll just go
Yes.
away. But here
Yes.
it is. The factors that cause the mental illness for many of us don't go away. So how can we just want it to go away when the factors that caused it don't go away? It
Yes.
may not be by the same person or the same event, but the way PTSD works, you may see something to trigger. So it does not go away. Instead of waiting for mental illness to go away, we need to go to a clinic and couple the spiritual and the clinical.
Yes, and that's what we talk about on this show, and that's my life work, is that integrative piece and everything. So I think so I do hear that, and also I know we were talking earlier, and I said that the mind is the activity of all communication, is the
Right.
center of all communication, and even how we think about God is dealing with our minds. Our
Mm-hmm.
concept, theology has to do with the
Mm-hmm.
study of God, but it's also how we interpret it. The lens, the glasses. That's what I talk about all the time. The lens, the glasses that we look from when we're dealing with any kind of circumstance or any kind of
Right.
situation. There's always a lens that we're looking from. And so, therefore, that is what channels and determines how we see ourselves, how we deal with others, how we work in relationships. All of those type of things are very vital.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're right on it with that. All right. So are there any other things? What are some of these other stigmas from a pastoral perspective? And I definitely definitely please you all comment on Facebook. Please call in, and let's just keep this conversation going. This is definitely a hot topic.
Right. I mean, obviously there's an element of disgrace and having to be transparent and let
Hmm.
people know, that we are affected, that we actually need help because the pastor is Superman and Superwoman,
Hmm.
and I think that from the pulpit now, so we set the standard, we set the culture in our church. I think from the pastor's perspective, but we set a culture where it's okay to say, I'm feeling a little weak. I'm hurt or something's wrong with me. And I'm gonna give you a personal example. And
Okay.
I'm gonna say this live because I've told this to my congregation. There was a period where I went through some depression in our church.
Mm.
Um, because my wife, you're European Jamaican family, we have wine and stuff in the house. And I remember it got so bad that when she would go to sleep, even if we had a glass for dinner, I would just take back the whole bottle. And I would come to church and I would function. I would pray. I would bury the dead. I'd
Mm.
dedicate your babies. I'd go visit the sick and all of that. But I was functioning in dysfunction because I didn't want it to be known that something was wrong with me, that I had an issue. But I did have an
Wow.
issue. And what I guess you can say raised my leadership stock and let people know that it was okay. I actually told my congregation this in a sermon. And I asked them when I was
Mm.
done, you still want me to be your pastor? And then they got it. Everyone realized that he's not just talking about himself. I was there too last week. I was just there last night. All of
Mm.
us have been there. So if we can set the culture from the top and realize, look, he who began a good work in us shall perform it. He's still performing work on us. But while he's working on us, we're going through. We're trying to figure it
Yeah.
out. And
Yeah.
until the day of Jesus Christ, we will continue to go through. But as we go through, we got to do more than just pray, speak in tongues, and read the Bible. Do all of that. But we need to go get help at the same time.
Yes, and I mean, and thank you for sharing your story, because I think we need to have more stories and more honesty in our conversations around that. And not that pastors have to put out everything that everyone is doing, but I do think the transparency. And that's one thing I do like about you in the last 3 years that I've known you. That you're very transparent about your experience and your journey. And you also said something else as we were talking earlier, and just been talking over 3 years. This has been a conversation over 3 years with us, that you said that everyone has mental health issues.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And and can you say more about that? Because I think people would definitely need to hear that from a pastoral perspective.
So, for instance, when people hear PTSD, post-traumatic stress,
Hmm.
they hear that, they automatically think about military members, those
Yeah.
that are in service, those that are in war. Now, watch this. We're soldiers in the army of the Lord.
Uh-huh.
Even if we're not Christians, most of us have been warring all of our life. Now, when a soldier is in battle, gets hurt, stuff's going on, at least they find a way to try to pull the soldier back, even though they got to bring the soldier back in. For
Uh-huh.
most of us in our lives, we've never been pulled out of our battle, whether it
Yes.
was a mother that can't provide for her kids, or a dad that just wants to see his kids, and the mom won't let him. I mean, we can go into different type of scenarios, but most of us war all the time and we never come out of it. So most of us have some sort of mental illness, something tragic.
Mm.
Something tragic has affected us in our childhood, in our adulthood, because you can't walk out of your doors every day and not confront something. So because of that, now you got triggers. So we're already
Yes.
born.
Yes.
We already got mental illness, and we can't get away from it because we got to go to work. We got to handle our husbands and our wives. And there's always something to spark
Yes.
up. And brother, we all need help. Every single person on this planet has some form of mental.
Yes.
I'm convinced of it, but enough people aren't going to get seen for it.
Yes, yes. And I think that's well said. And I think that when we don't go and get help and we're in leadership,
Mhm.
at Virginia Union University, Samuel DeWitt Proctor School of Theology, where I went, we talked about bleeding on the congregation. And that's why I'm talking about this. That's why sometimes it's an uncomfortable subject for a lot of people. But I see a lot of bleeding. And I see a lot of pastors and ministers that are burned out, that are wounded, that are
Mhm.
hurting. And what they do in their sermons, especially, bleed in their sermons. A lot of times, to be honest, it's not about God. It's about their own things, their own challenges, and they put it on other people. They take it out on other people. And also, speaking from thinking about it from a pastoral perspective, also it deals also with their families are affected. Their
Yep.
spouses and their children are affected because they have not worked on their own issues. Can you speak or say something about that? Because I think that that's very vital in this conversation.
About how it's affecting their families and stuff.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, because so let me just say this: when a pastor decides that they want to commit suicide, so pastoring is one of the top three professions for the highest suicide rate.
Mm-hmm.
Top three professions for the highest suicide rate. Pastor, the
Yes.
man.
Yeah.
When a pastor decides that they want to commit suicide, one, we got to understand suicide was the last option. There are other things, the bleeding on the congregation. Maybe when they
Mm.
were preaching, their preaching wasn't really preaching, but it was about their concerns and fussing at the conversation. Maybe you did
Mm-hmm.
smell alcohol. Maybe there was some infidelity, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
there's always something that leads up to it. And you're right, this type of stuff affects the family because
Yes.
again, The pastor is a leader at church. The pastor is a leader at home.
Yeah.
You want to be a source of strength. And you don't know how to tell somebody that I'm not okay.
Yes.
That something's wrong with me. So
Yes.
it's a man, it's a tragedy, brother. And let me just say this. I think that, again, I start from the top down. If the pastor himself had an organized mental health program at his church,
Uh-oh.
where not only he put it out, he or she, let me say that, put it
Yes.
out where the congregation attended, but he was transparent enough to realize for all of us to stay healthy, from the pulpit to the pew, we all need to take advantage of this mental health program. What happens is not only are the pastors and his leaders keeping their eye on the congregation to observe behaviors, but now the congregation can better protect the pastor and
Yes.
see those signs and symptoms and say, Pastor, I know you just had a sabbatical, 3 months ago, but you need to go in one now. And then when you go,
Yes.
you need to see. So now we're looking out for one another, because at the end of the day, even though we're pastors and they're sheep, we're all in the body of Christ. We're all just members in the body of Christ.
Yes, and that's very vital. I do want you all to call in or to send a message on Facebook. I see a lot of my friends are liking it and making comments, and I'm not going to call all the names right now, but I'm just saying all of you all are. So please say a comment, give a suggestion. This conversation is not to attack pastors, but it's to reach out, to offer different things, and I understand 20, 30 years ago, the pastor, we didn't have access to education maybe in that way. We didn't have, access to resources, and things like that. But we're in a new day and a new time. And it's a whole level of pastoring now, of leading people now, with the, social media, with the videos. Knowledge is everywhere, and also information, and also what I would say social conduct is also being seen, and more and more. And I'm just saying we got to be aware of these things and look at these things, because no one's perfect. And I think that we do need to have conversations and create safe places for clergy and for religious leaders to go into places where they can share, where they can ask questions, where they can be honest. Because a lot of this stuff, begins with that, about being authentic and being honest. We tell people about holy living and all of these rules and regulations, but in reality, a lot of these things are not realistic, because we don't live it. We tell people, to live and do, as I'm telling you, but then I don't live it. I don't live the example of that, and we all are human. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we're perfect, but we put this falsehood out that everybody's supposed to have everything together all the time. But I love ministries like yours and many other ministries that I'm a part of, where they can get in the congregation and say, look, I don't have it together this week. Y'all pray for me. I'm leading you. I'm called to lead you, but I also need prayer. I also need support. And another thing is, as I'm working with a lot of religious leaders, I also say to them that we have feelings too. We're affected too as leaders. People saying things. Sometimes we have a breaking point, and that's the purpose of why we're having this conversation. That's why I have this show, and just the many other things that I'm doing is to get the word out there, because, let's be preventative before we have a breaking point, before we have a meltdown, before we get to a place where we, are problematic and destructive. And that's what I'm seeing. And we got to get on board with this, because of the simple fact that, as these services are being cut in our government, and people are going to be struggling, I'm sorry to say, they're going to come to these churches, and they're going to ask and say to themselves, okay, you say you serve an awesome abundance God, a God that's of abundance and a God of love. Where is this? And I'm not saying that we got to get our things together in the church. And that's why I think it's very vital of what you were saying about in the church, that we need to have centers. We need to have some kind of either referral sources where ministers can go, that is very private and confidential and safe on one hand, but on the other hand, where congregations can get the support and the help that they need as well.
Hey, man, I was just thinking about something, Bryan. Now,
Excuse me.
this may sting a little bit for
No,
some
no, go ahead. This is the therapeutic conversation show. You can go ahead and sting.
people. So and I'm gonna say many pastors. For many pastors, being a pastor is probably one of the most one of the most greatest gratifying accomplishments that they've ever had in life. Think
Yes.
about it. We just paid probably $50,000 to $60,000 to go through 3 years of school to get
Yep.
an earned doctorate of ministry degree. We've gone through process. No one can take that from us. A
Yep.
lot of times when it comes to ministry and being pastors, um, you got people just installing anybody. Think
Yep.
about it. You didn't have a lot of personal successes. You weren't good at business. You weren't good at school. But now all of a sudden you're a pastor. This is your name. People are calling your name. Hold up. Now you're good at it. You got a
Yes.
crowd. You got a nice sized church. If if all you are is pastor and you forgot that you used to be a person before you were pastor,
Ooh.
you can't afford to lose that.
Wow.
You see what I'm saying? You need that. That's your greatest accomplishment in life, was that that you're pastoring. I was about to say you've been called to pastor, but in some cases it had nothing to do with you being called. You were good at it. Somebody put you into it. But
Uh-oh.
I'm sorry. Whatever it is, you're in it now. There's pressure from it. People pulling on you. You don't know
Mm-hmm.
how to say no because you're happy that people are calling your name, clapping. They want you, and then it's too much pressure, and you're never going to tell anybody that you're depressed, that you're feeling down. But people are going to start seeing the symptoms. Now I'm going to say this: I don't know a whole lot about Zachary Tim's story. I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I know he used to be. He was a drug addict at some point, and
Yeah.
he rehabilitated himself. But until he became a pastor and got that large church in between, I
Yeah.
don't think there's. And again, I don't know him. I don't think there was anything about him that was significant. But the fact that he came from drugs to do that makes that his greatest accomplishment.
Yes.
Being able to
Yeah.
have a family was a great accomplishment. Now,
Yes.
because of what happened with the infidelity, he loses his wife, but he's trying to hold on to his greatest accomplishment. That
Yes.
you watched him on TBN and you watched him on other things. His eyes
Yes.
started to change. His
Yes.
look started to change. A little bit more perspiration. You had to know something is wrong with this dude. And instead of
Yes.
telling somebody that I'm not okay, man, he's face up dead in New York.
Yes. Yes, yes, and we're definitely putting it out there not to, to down what happened, but to use it as an example. Everything in
Yeah.
life is a learning example, and we do know that they did find some substance in his, in his system and things like that. And unfortunately, and I had the opportunity several times of meeting him, not full conversations, but just saying hello and things like that. And him and his wife, and they pastored in Florida for the ones that may not know who he was, But I think that that's very vital, because why do we have to, because, and even as you said that about him, and of course, unfortunately, his death, where can a pastor go? That's what I asked. Where can a pastor go to get these services? And that's the question that I'm kind of raising. And I know I have created a place and continue to create places where pastors and religious and spiritual leaders, and what I mean by spiritual leaders, I want to make sure I clarify that, we have rabbis, we have priests, we have, different archbishops, adjutants, there's so many different titles of religious leadership. That's why I put that in spiritual leadership, because everybody's not just pastors, and there are bishops. There's people, we need help. I mean, whatever title you have. But what I did like about what you also saying is we're human first.
Yeah, we are.
That's what I think is the message today, is that we are human first. And we
Right.
have to deal with the humanity of who we are first.
Right.
God calls us as people, but we're dealing with the humanity of who we are. And I think that is very vital in this conversation, very vital in this conversation. So, I mean,
Right.
I definitely am. And so, from a pastoral perspective, what do we do? What would be
Well,
your thought, your advice?
and let me say this first, as I respond to that, and we're just picking back off each
Yeah,
other's
of
words.
course, of course.
Um, we want people to remember that we're human. The way they speak to us, the way they treat us bad, and the way they backbite pastors. We want people to remember that we're human,
Yes.
but we need to remember that we're human. Because at the end,
Oh,
you know what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, okay, if you remember that I'm human, but I forget to remember that I'm human, all I'm going to do is a disservice to you. I got to remember that I'm so human that
Uh-huh.
I not only need God, but I need to take some rest. I need to tell some people no. I need to
Yes. Boundaries.
yes. So it's a partnership. I need you to remember
Yes.
that I'm human, and I need to remember that I'm human. And as long
Yes.
as we all agree on that, I can be the best pastor. Now,
Yes.
to your question, so where can pastors get help?
Yes.
Obviously, pastors, I hope they have insurance, should have some insurance. But I
Mm-hmm.
think based on the culture of suicide, and it's not just pastors, but suicide alone,
Mm.
I think church boards should be more intentional about, scheduling out not only this pastor sabbaticals, but hey, pastor, checking in. You need to see someone, or let's not wait till you need to see someone. Let's set you up for some regular sessions where you just talk. You just
Oh, you on it now.
because I love my pastor, Reverend Dr. Frederick Thompson. I'm gonna see him tonight at our anniversary.
Wow.
He is a
Okay.
United grad. I can tell him anything, but he's not a psychologist. So
Yeah.
while it's good to have one confidant where you can just tell them anything, say, man, I messed up. I drank the whole bottle tonight, or I
Yeah.
went down to the district and I picked up one. Whatever it is, you need to be able to get that off your chest. But I think
Yes.
churches now, based on the culture, need to set up some type of system along with the pastor. Because at the end of the day, he or she has to agree that this is a need in our church. As long as
Yes.
the pastor doesn't see it as a need, they're not going to support it, which means he or she will not get help.
Yes.
So
Yes.
there are options, but the pastors need to lead that charge for the church.
Yes, I mean, and I think that's so vital. So creating these healthy communities where we can
Mm-hmm.
talk, and and Dr. Ian, my message too is a lot of times we're preaching things, and we're saying things to a lot of people. You know what I'm saying? We're out here and we're, I mean, but we're never, we're preaching at people, but we're never ever have a time where we can then have them to respond to how they're feeling. We
Yep.
preach messages and all of that, and and I think that that's very vital that we
Mm-hmm.
look at those things on why we're not. So the question is, why don't pastors seek mental health counseling? That's the overall question that we are talking about today on why we're not seeking mental health counseling. But I do think it starts with exactly what you're saying, Dr. Ian, that it does start with creating these safe places to talk and to be
Mm-hmm.
open. But the goal is that people would get mental health counseling services. That
Mm-hmm.
would be the goal. And even going this far too, I think that part of it is that we really have to begin to know that what I'm experiencing is everybody experience things.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody experience challenges, and a lot of times in my practice we don't deal with the childhood. We don't
Right.
deal with what happened to us. And we bring all of those things into ministry and we don't deal with what happened.
Right.
A lot of us been traumatized. A lot of us saw different things along our way, of life, a course of life, growing up, and even in our development that was traumatic for us that we never address and never talk about. Never
Mm-hmm.
talk about it at all. And then someone else made a comment about fear. That is fear. That
Right.
I mean, if I say I'm bipolar and I admit to the congregation that I'm bipolar, what's gonna happen? They gonna look at you like, oh no, I better. You know how we do the church finger? I got to get
Hey,
up out of here because my pastor's bipolar, but yet you bipolar and you talking about your anyway. Go ahead.
can I interject this though?
Yes.
So if we want to be Bible, the greatest apostle that we know of in our Bible, do you realize how much he talked about what he come on. I Paul, I'm the chief among sinners. I'm this guy on Romans 7. I'm struggling with this sin.
Uh
So
huh.
if one of the greatest apostles we know that wrote 2/3 of our New Testament, he wrote all these elaborate spirit-filled letters, but he didn't mind saying, I'm the chief of all sinners. I struggle
Yes. Yes.
struggling. If he can do it in writing letters to other churches, some baby churches that are trying to grow in their faith, man, can you imagine how much of a better connection we'll have with our congregants if we could just be real with them about what's going on. Most of the time, people are preaching to folks, and folks are coming to church, but they feel disconnected because they're like, they don't
Yes.
me, they don't know me, they don't know what I go through, and that's a
Yes.
daggone lie. We do know what they go through, but we act like we're already in heaven.
Yes. Yes.
No,
And you're so
we
right. You.
we can't be relevant if we act like nothing's wrong with us. And the
Yeah.
best thing for us, so for a believer, for us to show the impact of Christ and the influence of
Yes.
Christ and to show his miracles, we can't act like nothing's wrong with us, because if nothing's wrong with us, there's no reason for impartation or for a miracle or for any Christ intervention.
Yeah.
So if we want to set the culture that Christ makes the difference, we need to be honest about the fact that something wrong, so that as a congregation
Uh-huh.
is getting better and getting healed and stuff, we can see our pastors and leaders getting healed and God doing great things in them.
Exactly, and I think you're right on it. Elder Tim Capterville, hey Tim, thank you for joining us. Is saying that people think that attending convocation is their therapy. Tim, you better go ahead. Tim, I got to get you on this show because you've been raising some real questions on Facebook. Attending convocation and your yearly workshops and AIM and all this other stuff that we attend and spend all this money getting all dressed up and doing all of this is therapy. That's their therapy. I gotta go get. I have to go get well every year. What do you think about that, Dr. Ian?
No, it isn't. It's hurting them, because think about it. Look, the pressure, watch this, the pressure to put on the right outfit. So before I introduce myself, people see me as a certain type of pastor.
Yes.
The pressure to be amongst these people and hope that I'm as good as them when I'm there. And I can keep, tracing this. It's all that is a big environment of pressure. By the time you leave there, one or two things is going to happen. You're going to feel a little better about yourself, a little worse about yourself.
Yeah.
That's about it. But that's even pressure, man. When I go to conferences, and me and some of the people that I roll with, we laugh about this. I pick and choose what I want to go to.
Yeah.
I may want to hear some sermons because I'm always feeding people. All them classes during the day.
Yeah.
I won't say that one day. All them classes during the day.
Yeah.
If I don't want to go, I need to rest.
Yeah.
I put on some Netflix and I'll see you when I see you. But it's pressure.
I got you. Yeah, but see, that is, and that's what we're talking about on this show. We're talking about being healthy. This is not to attack. I know I laugh and joke sometimes, but it's not to attack pastors. We're here to help and support, because a lot of pastors are fearful. They really don't know where to go. They don't know what to do. They're preaching every week, but they don't even know where to even say anything about anything. And so I just think it's very vital. Please continue to say your comments. I see a lot of people are saying all kinds of things. We have Dr. James Parker on. We have Cynthia on. We have Cookie Payne, Chelselia Payne, and I had a conference a couple weeks ago, and I enjoyed myself with her, and she'll be on too, as my co-host. And so she's joining us. We have Kama. There's so many comments that are going on. So we're going to be continuing this next week. So the ones that are, a lot of people on my Facebook page, a lot of my friends, y'all are talking about this, and we want to definitely break this thing down. And, because people are traumatized. And I'm seeing Cynthia saying something about being traumatized. Anyone who has any trauma that's happening in their life come from a mental health challenge. Correct, Cynthia. She's right on it with that. And Dr. Ian, we're talking about these things. And so, we're going to have to come to a close in a few minutes, but we're going to continue this conversation because this seems to be a hot topic about how, why are pastors not receiving or getting mental health counseling services? Why are we not going to a therapist? Why are we not getting the support and the help that we need, in a time like this? Because many people are preaching, they're bleeding on the congregation, they're hurting, they're wounded, and they don't know where to go. And some of them definitely cannot go to their churches and get help. But I also like what you said too, Dr. Ian, about that the boards, the digging board and the board of directors, whatever kind of leadership board that these churches have, they should be invested in making sure that their leader is healthy, at least offering and saying, look, we'll pay for services if you need support, if you need, and one thing about it is, if they do go to mental health counseling services, everything is confidential. Now there are a couple things, and we'll talk about it in another show that's not that could break confidentiality, but overall, just talking about your problems, talking about what's going on, everything that we talk about in counseling is confidential. And that helps maybe to break some of the fear that's going on. And so that's what we're here talking about. This is the Therapeutic Conversation Show. I'm your host, Dr. Bryan Jones, LPC, and I'm joined here today with Dr. Ian Edwards, a pastor of 2 churches, and he has shared his experience. And we're going to be closing out in a few minutes. But I also want to announce that we're having a workshop here in Atlanta, Dr. Ian. It's called Blessed People Get Stressed Too. And we're having, it's called Blessed People Get Stressed Too, How to Identify the Signs of Mental Distress. And it's a free community workshop right here in Atlanta at Victory for the World Church in Stone Mountain, Georgia. And it's also on my website. And I'm going to also be posting this. We're having it Sunday, June 24th. 2018 at 12 o'clock right after service. And I'm going to be one of the facilitators. Also, Dr. Teresa Halt is going to be one of the facilitators. You can also check it out on www.joshua-generation.net. That's www.joshua-generation.net. And you can also Google us at the Joshua Generation Care and Consulting Services. It's also on my Facebook page and also will be on the Therapeutic Conversation Show Facebook page. But it says, Blessed People Get Stressed Too, How to Identify the Signs of Mental Distress, where we're going to be exploring identifying behaviors that lead to addiction. We're going to also be talking about methods to prevent anxiety, lower stress levels, and also maintain healthy lifestyles, which is so important. We're going to be looking at the different signs of mental distress, looking at effective coping skills for managing distress in your home, as we talked about today, church and your community. And the last thing we're going to talk about is breaking the stigma of mental health and mental distress. And to kind of go back to what you were saying, helping people to acknowledge that it's okay that I'm having a moment. It's okay that I'm struggling with something. We don't have to stay there. And it's not against our faith to say that I'm having a difficult time and I need help. Pastors, bishops, rabbis, whatever, religious leadership. It's okay to say those things. It's okay to acknowledge those things. And my whole life work, Dr. Ian, as you know, is about helping people integrate that the therapeutic part as well as the spiritual part. And I think we need to be seeking more people that are trained in both areas, because there are some psychologists, some mental health professionals that do not understand your spiritual understanding, do not understand that God has spoke to you, that God is dealing with you, that God is using you in that way. They don't understand it. And I think that we got to seek more people, and we got to have more people trained in the areas of spirituality as well as trained in the areas of therapy, licensed people, mental health counseling. But that fear, I think that is really what I want to leave. I want to really leave out there in the airways, that fear, that you don't have to walk in fear. And what does the Bible talk about? God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of love, peace, and a sound mind. Isn't that awesome? Sound mind is right there in the text. All right. So Dr. Ian, thank you so much today for joining us. Are you going to come back?
Yeah, I'll be back, man.
And I want you to talk about that post-traumatic stress disorder military person.
I'm going to talk about that a little more.
Yeah.
And if I can just take 60 seconds in closing.
Yes. I want to, just give them something that you want them to take away from our conversation. I've enjoyed having you on the show, and I want you to have the final thoughts. Thank you for joining in the Therapeutic Conversation Show. I'm your host, Dr. Bryan Jones. Thanks. I'm so thankful to 108 Praise Radio, Courtney and the staff, and Jocasta and everybody else who's supporting me and helping me. I appreciate you all. And so leave us with a final thought for today. And join us next week, every Saturday from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. here on 108 Praise Radio. Like our Facebook page and join us. Go ahead.
And again, Dr. Bryan, thank you for having me on the show.
You are so welcome.
I want to say first, you said several times about pastors don't know where to go, several times. And I started thinking to myself, we know how to search the Bible to help you out. we when we are feeling down, we know where to go find the liquor store. We know that where to find anything else to help us with the pain. So I say that to say there's no such thing as a pastor doesn't know where to go. It's if the pastor is just going to go get the help. They always
Mm.
know. We don't just exegete everything around us and know what to do and not know what to
Yes.
do for our mental health. But whether
Yes.
it's because of the fear, disgrace, or whatever, all of us know where to go. We just need to make a decision to go. So that's number one. I want to
Yes.
correct. We know where to go. We just need to go. Number
Yes.
two, if you said it in your closing comments, the church needs to have some certified or licensed people on their staff. They can
Yes.
pay them, maybe get some to volunteer. But in the interim, we need to be referring people out. We do not just need to, all right, pray with them at the altar. But once you've done that, we need to have some type of system, a phone roster, partner with the
Yes.
county, with social services, and say, look, go see them and follow back up with the church so we know how you're doing. We can't
Yes.
treat you, but there's some specialists that can. So we need to do a lot of referring out and stop trying to be that end all be all pastor. Like, I got it. I'll counsel them. I'll pray for them.
Mm.
No, we need to refer if we don't have those types of professionals already working. And
Wonderful.
and again, I thank you for the opportunity to be
Thank
on your show,
you.
share my own little way, and I hope that it helps someone. Just
Yes.
to know that me as a pastor, not just from the military,
Yes.
I still battle. I get depressed sometimes,
Yes.
and we all have mental illness. I want you, for every pastor that's on this, every leader, every minister, I want you to know it's okay that you do, but it's also
Yes.
okay to get help. You see, it's
Yes.
okay. It's okay to admit that you have a problem, and it's okay to get help at the same time.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Ian. You did it, and we did it, and we got this chance. Look, after 3 years, well, I hadn't been on 3 years, but I'm just saying, to just talk. So I'm definitely going to invite you back. I'm so honored that and also for sharing your story and being vulnerable, which I know you do with your congregation, but now nationally, you're vulnerable and saying that and all of those type of things. And so we're going to continue this conversation. Please join us next week, same time, same place, 108 Praise Radio. And I am your host again, Dr. Bryan Jones, LPC. And this has been the Therapeutic Conversation Show. Thank you, Dr. Ian. And don't forget about the workshop, Blessed People Get Stressed Too, How to Identify Those Signs of Mental Distress, next Sunday at 12 o'clock at Victory for the World Church. It's a free workshop. Dr. Teresa Halt, I think she'll be on next week to talk about this. And I'll be presenting and just, facilitating. And it's a free workshop to help us. So thank you. Have a great day. I see you all next week. Thank you again, Dr. Ian Edwards.